In the vast expanse of the Galactic Defense Coalition, where species from across the galaxy unite to protect their collective worlds, there exists a simple truth that every commander learns: never judge a recruit by their species classification. What happens when the most unassuming member of a remote garrison turns out to possess combat records so classified that even the station's AI requires special clearance to access them? When Lieutenant Commander ZaxTH discovers that their newest human recruits' files are sealed at levels typically reserved for legendary war heroes and extinct supersoldiers, the quiet frontier outpost of Kepler Station is about to learn why humans have a saying: still waters run deep. Some secrets are buried for a reason. Some warriors retire for an even better one. And, sometimes, the galaxy's most dangerous predator is the one serving you coffee in the mess hall with a smile. Welcome to Kepler Station, where the morning shift just got a lot more interesting. The morning alarm on Kepler Station echoed through the corridors with its usual mechanical precision, a sound that had become as familiar as breathing to the 137 beings who called this remote outpost home. Located on the edge of Coalition space, where the mapped galaxy gave way to the unknown void, Kepler Station served as both early warning system and final checkpoint for vessels traveling the outer rim trade routes. Lieutenant Commander ZaxTH of the Thylorian Navy stretched his forearms in the practiced motion that helped his exoskeleton adjust to the artificial gravity. His compound eyes swept across the duty roster displayed on his personal tablet, noting the usual assignments with the satisfaction of a commanding officer whose station ran like clockwork. Guard rotations, maintenance schedules, sensor sweeps, everything proceeding according to regulation. Everything except for one small anomaly that had been nagging at him for the past 3 weeks. The human. Private First Class Sarah Chen, recently assigned to Kepler Station from the Coalition Personnel Redistribution Center on Proxima Minor. On paper, she was utterly unremarkable. Standard human female, 28 standard years old, basic combat training completed at the Coalition Academy on Terra, no special qualifications or commendations. Her assignment request had specifically requested remote garrison duty with minimal combat probability. The kind of posting that attracted beings looking for quiet retirement were those avoiding the spotlight for less savory reasons. What bothered ZaxTH was not what was in her file, but what was not. For a species as thoroughly documented as humans, Sarah Chen's records were surprisingly sparse. Basic academy training, standard psychological evaluations, medical clearances, all present and accounted for. But her service history before the academy was completely blank, marked only with a bureaucratic notation that her previous records had been archived pending standard review. In his 15 years of command experience across 4 different stations, ZaxTH had never seen Coalition personnel files with missing service history. The Coalition military was many things, but thorough documentation was practically a religion among their administrative corps. Every being who served had their complete history digitized, cross-referenced, and backed up in 17 different databases spanning 12 star systems. But not Sarah Chen. ZaxTH made his way through the station's central corridor, acknowledging the respectful nods and salutes from the crew members beginning their shifts. Kepler Station was built like most Coalition outposts, a series of interconnected modules that could be rapidly assembled or disassembled depending on strategic needs. The central spine contained command operations, living quarters, and life support, while the outer rings housed weapons systems, sensor arrays, and docking facilities. The human in question was currently assigned to what the crew informally called the breakfast shift in the station's central mess hall. It was a mundane assignment, perfectly suited for someone seeking the kind of quiet service that kept one far from combat zones and even farther from attention. As ZaxTH entered the mess hall, the familiar sounds and smells of morning routine greeted him. The station's crew was diverse, even by Coalition standards. Thylorians like himself, with their insectoid features and multiple limbs, shared tables with the crystalline Vorthak whose bodies chimed softly when they moved. The furry Kelpian engineers clustered around their traditional high-protein breakfast while a pair of Rigelian security officers, their blue-skinned faces marked with the ritual scarification of their warrior caste, discussed the previous night's patrol reports. And there, behind the serving counter, was the subject of his curiosity. Sarah Chen moved with the quiet efficiency that seemed to characterize everything she did on the station. She was of average height for a human, perhaps 1.65 meters, with dark hair pulled back in regulation style and brown eyes that seemed to take in everything while revealing nothing. Her uniform was immaculate, her manner professional but not overly familiar, and her smile when serving the crew was genuine without being intrusive. In short, she was exactly the kind of unremarkable posting that stations like Kepler received regularly. Beings looking for a quiet place to serve out their commitment, earn their citizenship benefits, and disappear into civilian life. The coalition was full of such people, and they generally made excellent garrison personnel. So why could ZaxTH not shake the feeling that there was something fundamentally wrong with this picture? "Good morning, Lieutenant Commander," Sarah said as he approached the serving line, her standard coalition perfectly pronounced without a trace of the accent that most humans carried from their birth worlds. "The usual breakfast selection today?" "Indeed, Private Chen," ZaxTH replied, studying her face for any reaction to his scrutiny. There was none. She simply prepared his morning nutrition pack with the same efficient competence she brought to every task. "Tell me, how are you settling into life on Kepler?" "Very well, sir. The crew has been welcoming, and I appreciate the opportunity to serve in a peaceful posting." Her response was textbook perfect, the kind of answer that said absolutely nothing while appearing to be completely forthcoming. "I notice from your file that you specifically requested remote garrison duty. Most humans your age are looking for assignments with more advancement opportunities." ZaxTH watched carefully as he spoke, his compound eyes designed to catch micro-expressions that might escape other species. Sarah's hands never paused in their work, and her expression remained pleasantly neutral. "I prefer quieter environments, sir. Some of us aren't cut out for the excitement of fleet duty or planetside operations." It was a perfectly reasonable response. It was also completely at odds with every instinct that had kept ZaxTH alive through 2 border conflicts and a pirate insurgency. The conversation was interrupted by the arrival of Sergeant Kellick, the station's Kelpian security chief. The large, bear-like being lumbered up to the counter with the heavy footsteps that announced his presence throughout the station. "Morning, Lieutenant Commander. Chen, the usual, if you please." Kellick's booming voice carried the authority of someone accustomed to being obeyed, but his manner with the human was respectful, even friendly. "Of course, Sergeant." Sarah began assembling Kellick's breakfast with practiced efficiency. As she worked, ZaxTH noticed something that made his internal alarms begin to sound. Sarah Chen was left-handed. He had observed this before, but only now did the significance strike him. She wrote left-handed, operated equipment left-handed, and served food left-handed. But when she had saluted him upon her arrival 3 weeks ago, she had used her right hand, as per coalition regulation. Most beings favored their dominant hand in all activities unless specifically trained otherwise. Military training might teach ambidextrous weapon handling, but basic motor functions typically remained consistent. The fact that Sarah could execute a perfect regulation salute with her non-dominant hand suggested a level of training that went well beyond basic academy instruction. "Sergeant Kellick," ZaxTH said casually, "you have been working with Private Chen on security protocols. How would you assess her aptitude for standard procedures?" The Kelpian's massive shoulders shrugged as he accepted his breakfast tray. "Better than average, I'd say. Picks things up quick, follows orders without question, and she's got good situational awareness. Though I have to admit, for someone with basic training, she seems to know more about security systems than her file would suggest." "How so?" "Well, yesterday I was explaining our sensor grid layout to her, just basic orientation stuff, and she asked about our coverage gaps near the asteroid field. Thing is, I never mentioned we had coverage gaps, and identifying them requires the kind of analysis training that takes years to develop." Kellick paused, his dark eyes reflecting confusion. "When I asked her about it, she said she was just curious about theoretical weaknesses." Seemed reasonable enough. ZaxTH felt his certainty crystallize into determination. "Sergeant, I want you to run a full security review on Private Chen's access permissions. Also, I want you to monitor her activities for the next few days. Nothing obvious, just standard observation." "Is there a problem, sir?" "I am not certain. But I have learned to trust my instincts in these matters." As if summoned by their conversation, a priority message alert chimed on ZaxTH's personal communicator. He glanced at the device and felt his blood temperature drop several degrees. The message was from Coalition Command, marked with security classifications he rarely saw on a frontier posting. "Excuse me," he said to Kellic, stepping away from the serving line to read the message in private. The communication was brief but alarming. Coalition intelligence had detected unusual data queries being made against classified personnel databases. The queries appeared to originate from various Coalition installations across the Outer Rim, all attempting to access the same restricted files. The files in question belonged to a former Coalition operative whose records had been sealed at the highest levels of government. The operative's name was Sarah Chan. ZaxTH's compound eyes swept back to the serving counter, where the woman in question continued to serve breakfast to the morning shift with unflappable calm. According to the intelligence brief, someone with significant technical skills was systematically trying to access her real service record from multiple locations, suggesting either a coordinated effort by hostile forces or an internal security breach of unprecedented scope. The brief concluded with an order that made ZaxTH's exoskeleton tighten involuntarily: maintain surveillance on subject. Do not confront. Await further instructions. For the first time since taking command of Kepler Station, ZaxTH found himself wondering if his quiet frontier posting was about to become significantly more interesting than he had ever wanted it to be. As he watched Sarah Chan efficiently serving the crew their morning meal, laughing politely at Ensign Toreke's terrible jokes and remembering exactly how each species preferred their nutrition supplements prepared, ZaxTH realized that he was looking at either the most dedicated method actor in Coalition space or something far more dangerous than a simple Garrison cook. The morning shift continued around him, the familiar routine of a frontier outpost proceeding with mechanical precision. But, beneath the surface of that routine, ZaxTH could feel the first tremors of something that threatened to shatter the peace of Kepler Station forever. And, at the center of it all stood a human woman with kind eyes and gentle hands, whose personnel file was apparently important enough to attract the attention of intelligence agencies across the galaxy. The question that haunted ZaxTH as he finished his breakfast and prepared for the day's duties was simple: what could a mere Garrison cook have done to warrant that level of interest? He suspected that when he finally learned the answer, he might wish he had never asked the question. The investigation began subtly, as all good investigations do. ZaxTH spent the following days implementing what he called enhanced routine protocols, which was military speak for watching Sarah Chan without appearing to watch her. He assigned additional duties that would bring various crew members into contact with her, rotated schedules to observe her behavior during different shifts, and quietly reviewed the station's security logs for any anomalies since her arrival. What he found was frustrating in its normalcy. Sarah Chan followed regulations to the letter. She arrived for duty precisely on time, performed her assigned tasks with quiet competence, and returned to her quarters during off-duty hours, where she apparently spent her time reading technical manuals and maintaining her personal equipment. Her interactions with the crew were friendly but not overly familiar, helpful but not intrusive. She had volunteered for extra duties twice, both times to assist with routine maintenance that kept her well away from any sensitive areas of the station. In short, she was a model Garrison soldier. Which only made ZaxTH more suspicious. The breakthrough came on the fourth day, when Chief Petty Officer Vexlar approached him with a puzzled expression on his reptilian features. The Saurian engineer was responsible for maintaining the station's primary systems, and his technical expertise had kept Kepler Station operational through 3 system failures that should have required a full engineering team to resolve. Lieutenant Commander, Vexlar began, his forked tongue tasting the air in the nervous gesture common to his species. I need to report something unusual. ZaxTH gestured for the engineer to continue, noting the careful way Vexlar glanced around the command center before speaking. Yesterday, during the routine maintenance cycle for the environmental systems, I encountered a problem with the atmospheric recycling unit in Section C. The control algorithms were corrupted, and the system was operating at only 60% efficiency. Standard protocol would require shutting down life support to that section while I rebuild the programming from backup files. I recall you mentioning this issue. You reported it resolved ahead of schedule. Yes, sir. That is the unusual part. Vexlar's neck frills flared slightly, indicating his confusion. When I returned to Section C this morning to begin the repair work, I discovered that someone had already corrected the problem. The algorithms had been not merely restored, but optimized beyond their original specifications. The system is now operating at 112% efficiency. ZaxTH felt his attention sharpen. Who else has access to those systems? That is what troubles me, sir. The repair required accessing the primary engineering control networks, which are restricted to senior technical personnel. The work was done during the night shift, when only essential personnel were on duty. According to the security logs, no one with appropriate clearance accessed Section C during that time period. Could the repair have been automated? Perhaps a delayed maintenance protocol? Vexlar's head shook in the negative gesture his species had adapted from human contact. Impossible, sir. The optimization required creative problem-solving and intuitive leaps that no automated system could perform. Someone with advanced engineering training spent several hours completely rebuilding our atmospheric control algorithms. The work is brilliant, I must admit. It will improve our environmental efficiency by at least 15%. ZaxTH was quiet for a moment, processing the implications. Chief, I want you to review all system modifications made since Private Chen's arrival. Look for any improvements or repairs that cannot be accounted for through official maintenance logs. Sir, are you suggesting that Private Chen is responsible for unauthorized system modifications? Her file indicates only basic technical training. I am suggesting that Private Chen's file may not contain the complete truth about her capabilities. Vexlar's forked tongue tasted the air again, a sign of deep thought among his people. With respect, sir, the level of technical skill required for what I discovered would take years of specialized training to develop. We are talking about expertise that rivals senior engineering officers in the Coalition fleet. Nevertheless, I want that review completed by end of shift. And, Chief, this conversation remains confidential until further notice. After Vexlar departed, ZaxTH turned his attention to the morning security briefing that Sergeant Kelleck had prepared. The Kelpian's observations over the past few days had yielded interesting, if circumstantial, information about their mysterious human cook. She moves like someone with combat training, Kelleck reported, his massive frame filling the chair across from ZaxTH's desk. Not obviously, but I have been watching carefully. Her situational awareness is exceptional. She always positions herself with clear sightlines to exits, never turns her back to potential threats, and her reaction time when someone approaches from behind is significantly faster than civilian normal. Anything else? Yesterday, when Ensign Mortek accidentally dropped a serving tray behind her, she spun and caught it before it hit the ground. The catch required reflexes that are usually only seen in trained security personnel. When I complimented her quick thinking, she laughed and said she had played a lot of sports in her youth. ZaxTH made notes on his personal tablet, adding Kelleck's observations to the growing file he was building. What about her interactions with the crew? Friendly but controlled. She remembers personal details about everyone, asks appropriate questions about their families and interests, but reveals very little about herself. Classic intelligence training behavior, if you ask me. Have you tested her knowledge in other areas? Kelleck's expression became thoughtful. I tried engaging her in conversation about current events, political situations, trade routes, that sort of thing. Her knowledge is comprehensive, but she presents it carefully. She knows more about galactic affairs than her file suggests she should, but she conceals it behind questions and hypothetical discussions. The picture that was emerging from these observations was troubling. Sarah Chen was clearly not who her personnel file claimed she was, but her behavior suggested someone trying very hard to avoid attention rather than someone gathering intelligence or planning sabotage. If she was an enemy agent, she was either remarkably subtle or pursuing objectives that were not immediately apparent. ZaxTH's contemplation was interrupted by an urgent communication from the station's communications officer, Lieutenant Yixera. The crystalline being's harmonic voice carried notes of concern that made her species' natural music sound discordant. Lieutenant Commander, we are receiving a priority communication from Coalition Command. The message is classified and requires your immediate attention. Transfer it to my personal terminal, Lieutenant. Sir, the communication is not coming through standard channels. It appears to be using emergency protocols that bypass our normal security systems. That information sent warning signals through ZaxTH's nervous system. Emergency protocols were reserved for situations involving immediate threats to Coalition security or catastrophic system failures. Their use required authorization from the highest levels of command. Very well. routed through the secure communication chamber. The secure communication chamber was a shielded room at the heart of Kepler station designed for classified conversations that required absolute privacy. As ZaxTH entered the chamber and activated its security protocols, he reflected that in 3 years of commanding the station, he had never had occasion to use this facility. The holographic projector activated, revealing the three-dimensional image of a being ZaxTH recognized but had never expected to communicate with directly. Admiral Korthak of the Coalition Intelligence Service was a legend in military circles, a Thylaurian whose strategic genius had prevented 3 interstellar wars and whose intelligence network was rumored to extend into every corner of known space. Lieutenant Commander ZaxTH, the Admiral's image said without preamble, "You have been conducting observations of Coalition personnel. Designate Sarah Chen." It was not a question. "Yes, sir." Her personnel file contained irregularities that warranted investigation. "Your instincts serve you well, Commander. The being you know as Sarah Chen is indeed not what her file suggests. However, the situation is significantly more complex than you realize." ZaxTH waited for clarification, noting the unusual tension in the Admiral's posture. "Sarah Chen is not an enemy agent, Commander. She is one of ours. More accurately, she was one of ours. Her actual designation was Agent 7 of the Coalition Deep Intelligence Division, and, until 18 months ago, she was the most effective operative in our service." The revelation struck ZaxTH like a physical blow. The Coalition Deep Intelligence Division was so classified that most officers were not even aware of its existence. Those who were knew only that it dealt with threats so sensitive that regular intelligence services could not be trusted to handle them. Agent 7, the Admiral continued, spent 12 years conducting operations that prevented catastrophic threats to Coalition security. Her service record includes the prevention of the Orion conspiracy, the neutralization of the vegan separatist movement, and the infiltration that stopped the Centauri bioweapon project. Her skills in combat, engineering, intelligence analysis, and deep cover operations made her invaluable to Coalition security. "What happened 18 months ago, sir?" Admiral Korthak's expression became grave. Agent 7 discovered something that changed everything. During an operation in the Outer Rim, she uncovered evidence of a conspiracy within the Coalition government itself. High-ranking officials were secretly collaborating with hostile alien forces to undermine Coalition defenses from within. ZaxTH felt his exoskeleton constrict as the implications became clear. She discovered treason at the highest levels. Exactly. When she reported her findings, she learned that the conspiracy extended into the intelligence services themselves. Her immediate superiors, beings she had trusted with her life for years, were part of the treasonous network. They attempted to eliminate her to protect their secret. But she escaped. Agent 7 did not simply escape, Commander. She systematically destroyed the entire network, exposing their activities and eliminating their operational capacity. However, in doing so, she was forced to use methods that placed her outside the official chain of command. Technically, her actions could be classified as violations of Coalition law, despite their necessity. The pieces of the puzzle were beginning to form a picture that ZaxTH found both impressive and terrifying. So she was granted a new identity and assigned to quiet duty. Not granted, Commander. Agent 7 created her own new identity and chose her own assignment. Her technical skills allowed her to fabricate a complete personnel file that would pass routine inspection while concealing her true history. She selected Kepler Station because she wanted to disappear into the kind of quiet service where her extraordinary abilities would not be noticed. ZaxTH was quiet for a moment, absorbing the enormity of what he had just learned. "Why are you telling me this, Admiral? And why now?" "Because, Commander, Agent 7's enemies have found her." The holographic display shifted to show a series of intelligence reports and data analyses that made ZaxTH's worst fears seem optimistic by comparison. 3 days ago, Admiral Korthak explained, "Our monitoring systems detected coordinated attempts to access Agent 7's classified files from multiple locations across Coalition space. The attempts are sophisticated and persistent, suggesting the involvement of highly trained operatives with significant resources." "The same enemies she originally uncovered?" "We believe so. The treasonous network was damaged but not completely eliminated. They have spent the past 18 months rebuilding their capabilities while searching for the operative who destroyed their original organization. They want revenge, but, more importantly, they want to ensure that Agent 7 cannot interfere with their new operations. ZaxTH studied the intelligence reports, noting the sophisticated nature of the cyber attacks and the resources being deployed to locate one former agent. What are my orders, Admiral? Your orders are complex, Commander. Officially, you are to maintain normal operations and report any unusual activity. Unofficially, you are to prepare for the possibility that Kepler Station may become a combat zone. Should I confront Private Chen about her true identity? Absolutely not. Agent 7 chose to retire for good reason, and she has earned the right to live quietly after her years of service. However, her enemies will not allow her to remain hidden. When they come for her, and they will come, she will need allies. The Admiral's image leaned forward, emphasizing the importance of his next words. Commander, I am going to share with you information that is classified at the highest levels of Coalition security. Agent 7 is not merely a skilled operative. She is something that officially does not exist in Coalition records. She is what we call a human combat specialist. ZaxTH had never heard the term, but something about it made his survival instincts activate. Humans, Commander, are a species that evolved under conditions that made them exceptional survivors. Their physical capabilities, mental resilience, and strategic thinking make them formidable in ways that other species often fail to appreciate. A human combat specialist is a human who has been trained to utilize those natural capabilities to their fullest potential. How formidable are we speaking about, Admiral? Agent 7 once infiltrated and single-handedly destroyed a military installation defended by 200 enemy soldiers. She has defeated entire pirate fleets using nothing but strategic deception and improvised weapons. Her combat effectiveness is limited only by her preference for solutions that minimize casualties. ZaxTH felt a chill that had nothing to do with the station's environmental systems. He had been sharing meals and casual conversation with one of the most dangerous beings in known space. Your mission, Commander, is to ensure that when her enemies arrive, Agent 7 has the support she needs to survive. Do not interfere with her cover unless absolutely necessary, but be prepared to provide whatever assistance she requires when the situation becomes active. How will I know when that happens, sir? Admiral Korthak's expression became grimly amused. Trust me, Commander. When Agent 7 stops pretending to be Sarah Chen, you will know. The calm before the storm lasted exactly 6 hours. ZaxTH had barely finished reviewing the classified files Admiral Korthak had transmitted when the first indication of trouble arrived in the form of a routine merchant vessel requesting docking permission. The ship identified itself as the Cosmic Wanderer, a standard cargo hauler operating under Regelian registration and carrying agricultural supplies for the Outer Rim colonies. Under normal circumstances, such vessels were welcomed at Kepler Station. The frontier outpost served as a vital resupply point for legitimate traders, and the fees they paid helped offset the station's operational costs. But these were no longer normal circumstances, and Lieutenant Yixera's sensor readings immediately triggered ZaxTH's heightened paranoia. Lieutenant Commander, the Crystalline Communications Officer reported, her harmonic voice carrying notes of confusion. The approaching vessel's registration appears valid, but there are some anomalies in their identification signals. ZaxTH studied the sensor displays, noting details that would have seemed insignificant a day earlier. What kind of anomalies? Their cargo manifest lists standard agricultural equipment, but our scans indicate energy signatures consistent with military-grade hardware. Also, their crew complement appears larger than normal for a vessel of this size. How many souls aboard? 15, sir. Standard crew for a ship this size would be 5 to 7. ZaxTH felt his certainty crystallize into action. Deny docking permission. Inform them that we are conducting maintenance on our docking facilities and cannot accommodate their vessel at this time. Sir, they are requesting emergency resupply. They claim to have experienced equipment failures that require immediate attention. A convenient emergency. Maintain our position, Lieutenant. Suggest they proceed to Proxima Station for assistance. The response came faster than ZaxTH had expected, and it confirmed his worst fears. Instead of acknowledging the redirect and proceeding to alternate facilities, the Cosmic Wanderer dropped its pretense entirely. "Unknown Coalition vessel," came the transmission, delivered in a voice that carried the cold authority of someone accustomed to being obeyed. "You will grant us immediate docking permission and prepare to receive boarding parties for inspection." This is not a request. ZaxTH activated the station's alert protocols, sending coded signals to department heads throughout Kepler Station. Within minutes, the facility transformed from a sleepy garrison post into a military installation preparing for combat. Emergency blast doors sealed critical sections, weapons systems powered up, and off-duty personnel reported to battle stations with the efficiency of a well-trained crew. "Lieutenant Commander," Sergeant Kelleck's voice came over the communication system. "Security teams are in position. However, I think you should know that Private Chen is not in her assigned quarters." "Where is she?" "Unknown, sir. She was scheduled to be off duty, but when I sent someone to her quarters as part of the security lockdown, her room was empty. Her personal equipment is gone, and there are no signs of struggle." ZaxTH was not surprised. If Sarah Chen was indeed the legendary Agent 7, she would have detected the approaching threat long before his sensors confirmed it. The question was whether she had fled the station to avoid conflict or taken position to engage the enemy on her own terms. His answer came when Chief Vexlar's voice crackled over the engineering channel with barely controlled excitement. "Lieutenant Commander, someone has accessed the primary power distribution systems and implemented modifications to our defensive capabilities. Our shield generators are now operating at 150% efficiency, and the targeting systems for our defensive weapons have been upgraded with firing solutions I have never seen before." "Were these modifications authorized?" "Sir, these modifications require engineering expertise that exceeds anything in our technical manuals. Whoever did this work has turned our standard garrison defenses into something resembling a battleship weapons array." ZaxTH realized that Agent 7 had not fled. She had spent the past few hours quietly transforming Kepler Station into a fortress capable of defending itself against significantly superior forces. The knowledge that she was still aboard, and apparently preparing for battle, was both reassuring and terrifying. "All stations, prepare for hostile boarding action," ZaxTH announced over the station's communication system. "This is not a drill. We have 15 minutes before the approaching vessel reaches docking range." The next few minutes passed with the organized chaos of combat preparation. Weapons were distributed to crew members, defensive positions were established at critical locations, and emergency protocols activated systems that most of the garrison had never seen operational. But, despite their preparations, nothing could have prepared ZaxTH for what happened when the enemy made their move. The Cosmic Wanderer approached the station with aggressive confidence, their energy weapons powering up as they prepared to disable Kepler Station's defenses. What they discovered was that their intelligence about the station's capabilities was dramatically outdated. The first enemy weapons blast struck Kepler Station's shields and was absorbed without causing any visible damage. The second blast triggered a return volley that demonstrated just how extensively Agent 7 had modified their defensive systems. The station's weapons, which had been designed for anti-asteroid work and basic defense against pirates, fired with precision that would have impressed a fleet weapons officer. Each shot struck the enemy vessel with surgical accuracy, targeting specific systems rather than attempting to destroy the ship outright. Within 30 seconds, the Cosmic Wanderer found itself completely disabled, its engines offline, weapons systems destroyed, and life support functioning only through emergency backup power. "Lieutenant Commander," Lieutenant Yixera reported with barely concealed amazement, "the enemy vessel has been neutralized. Their entire crew appears to be unconscious, likely due to some form of incapacitating agent introduced into their life support system." ZaxTH studied his tactical displays, noting that the engagement had ended so quickly that most of his crew were still reaching their battle stations. "Lieutenant, scan the enemy vessel for life signs and prepare a boarding party." "Sir, there is something else you should see. Our sensors are detecting an additional contact approximately 2 million kilometers out. It appears to be a coalition intelligence vessel operating under stealth protocols." The new arrival identified itself with codes that confirmed ZaxTH's suspicions. Admiral Korthak's intelligence service had been monitoring the situation, ready to intervene if necessary. But Agent 7's swift neutralization of the threat had made their assistance unnecessary. As boarding parties secured the disabled enemy vessel, ZaxTH found himself searching the station for any sign of their mysterious benefactor. Sarah Chen had vanished as completely as if she had never existed, leaving behind only the evidence of her extraordinary capabilities. The search ended when he received a simple message on his personal communication device: Mess Hall. Coffee is ready. ZaxTH made his way through the station's corridors, noting the crew members who were beginning to realize that their quiet Garrison posting had just transformed into something entirely different. When he entered the mess hall, he found Sarah Chen standing behind the serving counter, preparing coffee with the same calm efficiency she had shown every morning since her arrival. "Good evening, Lieutenant Commander," she said without looking up from her work. "I trust the security exercise went well." "Security exercise? That is how I assume you will report today's events in your official logs. A surprise drill to test the station's defensive capabilities and crew readiness." She looked up at him then, and, for the first time since her arrival, ZaxTH saw something in her eyes that had been carefully hidden. Intelligence, determination, and a weariness that spoke of battles fought in shadows where victory was measured not in glory but in the prevention of catastrophe. The enemy vessel contained detailed intelligence about this station and its crew, ZaxTH said carefully. They knew our defensive capabilities, our staffing levels, and our operational protocols. They also had specific information about one crew member in particular. Sarah nodded, continuing to prepare coffee as if they were discussing the weather. "They have been searching for me for 18 months. I had hoped that Sarah Chen could disappear completely, but apparently my enemies are more persistent than I anticipated." "Will they send additional forces?" "No." The boarding party found evidence that this was a reconnaissance mission rather than a full assault. "They needed to confirm my location before committing their primary assets. Today's action will convince them that I am no longer hiding." ZaxTH accepted the coffee she offered, noting that it was prepared exactly as he preferred it despite never having told her his preferences. "What happens now?" "Now, Lieutenant Commander, you file your report about a successful training exercise that tested station security protocols. Your crew performed admirably, and the modifications to your defensive systems will remain in place for future use." "And Sarah Chen?" She was quiet for a long moment, staring out the viewport at the disabled enemy vessel being secured by coalition security forces. "Sarah Chen was a good cover identity. She allowed me to experience what normal life might feel like, to serve alongside people who valued me for my contributions rather than my ability to eliminate threats. But she was always temporary." "You are leaving." "I have to. My presence here puts the entire crew at risk, and that is unacceptable. The galaxy is a dangerous place, Lieutenant Commander, and there are threats that require specialized attention. Someone has to stand between the darkness and the innocent." ZaxTH studied her face, seeing now what he had been unable to identify before. This was not a person seeking peace, but a warrior who had found a brief respite from an endless war. "The crew will miss their cook." Sarah smiled then, the first completely genuine expression he had seen from her. "Tell them that Sarah Chen was honored to serve alongside them. Tell them that she learned what it meant to be part of something worth protecting." As she prepared to leave, ZaxTH found himself asking the question that had been bothering him since Admiral Korthak's revelation. "Agent 7, what did you discover that was worth sacrificing your retirement? What could be important enough to bring you back to active duty?" She paused at the mess hall entrance, her expression becoming grave. "I discovered that the threat I thought we had eliminated was merely the visible portion of something much larger. The conspiracy within the coalition government was not an isolated incident, but part of a coordinated effort by forces that want to see human expansion into the galaxy stopped permanently. Other species working against humanity? Other species being manipulated by something far worse. There is an intelligence operating in the void beyond our mapped space, something that views the spread of human civilization as a threat to its own existence. The traitors within our government were not seeking power or profit, Lieutenant Commander. They were being prepared as instruments of humanity's destruction." ZaxTH felt a chill that penetrated to his exoskeleton. "And you are going to confront this threat alone?" not alone. There are others like me, humans who have accepted the responsibility of standing guard in the dark places where normal people cannot go. We are the early warning system, the first line of defense against threats that would destroy everything we have built. Why humans? What makes your species so important to this conflict? Agent 7 turned back to face him, and, in her eyes, Zaxth saw the reflection of battles fought on a scale he could barely comprehend. Because, Lieutenant Commander, humans have something that no other species in the galaxy possesses. We have the ability to adapt, to survive, and to fight against impossible odds, not because we are the strongest or the smartest, but because we refuse to accept defeat. We carry within us the genetic memory of a species that crawled out of caves and reached for the stars despite every reason to give up. She paused, gathering her equipment with practiced efficiency. The enemies we face believe that human expansion can be stopped through fear, manipulation, and strategic elimination of our most capable individuals. They are about to learn that every human they target, every colony they threaten, and every act of aggression they commit only strengthens our resolve. The enemy vessel's crew, will they be questioned? They will be processed through normal intelligence channels. However, I suspect they will reveal little of value. The true enemy prefers to operate through intermediaries and manufactured conflicts. Direct confrontation is not their preferred method. Zaxth nodded, understanding now why Agent 7's war would never truly end. Will we see you again? Perhaps. The galaxy is vast, but the frontier is smaller than it appears. If Kepler Station ever faces a threat beyond its ability to handle, remember that help sometimes comes from unexpected sources. With that, she was gone, leaving behind only the lingering scent of coffee and the knowledge that the quiet cook who had served the crew's breakfast every morning was actually one of the most dangerous individuals in known space. As Zaxth prepared his official report on the day's training exercise, he reflected on how much his understanding of the galaxy had changed in a single afternoon. The frontier was not the peaceful backwater he had assumed, but the front line of a conflict most beings did not even know existed. Somewhere in the void beyond mapped space, forces were moving against humanity with patience and resources that span generations. But, standing between those forces and the innocent civilians of the coalition were individuals like Agent 7, humans who had accepted the burden of fighting wars that could never be officially acknowledged. For the first time since taking command of Kepler Station, Zaxth truly understood why the coalition valued human partnerships so highly. It was not just their technical skills or military capabilities, but their willingness to stand alone in the dark so that others could sleep peacefully in the light. The enemy had made a critical error in targeting Agent 7. They had assumed that eliminating one operative would weaken human defenses. Instead, they had awakened something that would hunt them across the galaxy with relentless determination. As he filed his report and began the process of returning Kepler Station to normal operations, Zaxth found himself hoping that he would never again need to see the difference between Sarah Chan and Agent 7. But he also knew that when that difference became necessary, the galaxy would witness something that enemy forces were completely unprepared to face. The fury of humanity unleashed in defense of everything they held dear. 3 months after Agent 7 disappeared from Kepler Station, Zaxth began to understand that her departure had been the beginning rather than the end of their involvement in the shadow war she had described. The first indication came through official channels, buried in routine intelligence briefings that crossed his desk as part of standard Frontier Command protocols. Reports of unusual activity in sectors adjacent to Kepler Station's area of responsibility started appearing with increasing frequency. Merchant vessels disappearing along established trade routes, communications blackouts in frontier settlements, and unexplained technical failures affecting coalition installations throughout the Outer Rim. Individually, these incidents appeared random, the kind of problems that frontier regions experienced regularly due to equipment failures, pirate activity, or simple bad luck. But, when viewed collectively, they formed a pattern that Zaxth's growing paranoia found deeply disturbing. Someone was systematically probing coalition defenses in the frontier regions, gathering intelligence about response times, communication protocols, and defensive capabilities. The probes were subtle, designed to appear as routine maintenance issues or equipment failures, but their coordination suggested a level of planning that exceeded anything pirates or independent hostile forces could organize. The second indication came through unofficial channels that ZaxTH had not even known existed until Agent 7's modifications to the station's systems began producing data streams that bypassed normal coalition intelligence networks. The communications array that she had upgraded was apparently designed to monitor frequencies and encryption protocols that were not part of standard military communications. Over the past month, these monitoring systems had detected increasing levels of encrypted traffic in languages that the Coalition's translation databases could not identify. Chief Vexlar had brought this discovery to ZaxTH's attention with the nervous energy of someone who had stumbled across something they wished they could ignore. Lieutenant Commander, the Saurian engineer had reported, the communication modifications left by our former cook have been collecting data that I do not understand. The systems are recording conversations in what appear to be completely unknown languages, using transmission protocols that do not match any known technology. Have you attempted to analyze the communications? Sir, the conversations appear to be coordinating activities across multiple star systems. Based on transmission timing and frequency patterns, I estimate that at least 50 different sources are participating in regular communication cycles. ZaxTH studied the data that Vexlar had compiled, noting transmission patterns that suggested the existence of a communication network spanning hundreds of light years. The coordination required for such a network implied resources and organization that exceeded most legitimate governments, let alone criminal enterprises. Chief, I want you to continue monitoring these communications, but do not attempt to decode them or trace their origins. Simply record everything and maintain detailed logs. Sir, should we report this to Coalition intelligence? The question forced ZaxTH to confront a possibility he had been avoiding. If Agent 7's warnings were accurate, the conspiracy she had uncovered extended into the intelligence services themselves. Reporting unusual communications to the wrong personnel could expose Kepler Station to the same threats that had forced her to disappear. For now, we keep this information internal. If patterns emerge that suggest immediate threats to Coalition security, we will address them through appropriate channels. The third indication came in the form of a visitor who arrived without advance notice or apparent authorization. The shuttle that docked with Kepler Station identified itself as a Coalition intelligence courier carrying classified materials for the station commander. The pilot was human, which was unusual but not unprecedented for intelligence operations. What was unusual was the complete absence of any record of the shuttle's departure from any Coalition facility or its presence in the transportation scheduling databases. The pilot introduced herself as Lieutenant Sarah Martinez, Coalition Intelligence Service, and presented authorization codes that verified her identity through the station's security systems. Her mission, according to the official documentation she carried, was to conduct a routine security review of frontier installations to assess their readiness for potential threats. ZaxTH might have accepted this explanation if not for two details that triggered every alarm his recent experiences had taught him to recognize. First, Lieutenant Martinez moved with the same controlled awareness that he had learned to associate with Agent 7. Second, when she handed him her authorization documents, he noticed that she was left-handed but saluted with military precision using her right hand. Lieutenant Martinez, ZaxTH said carefully, your security review arrives at an interesting time. We have been observing some unusual activity in surrounding sectors that may be relevant to your assessment. What kind of unusual activity, sir? Communications traffic using unknown protocols, coordinated probes of frontier defenses, and equipment failures that follow suspicious patterns. He watched her face carefully as he spoke, looking for any reaction that might confirm his suspicions. Lieutenant Martinez nodded thoughtfully, making notes on a personal tablet with practiced efficiency. These observations are consistent with intelligence reports from other frontier installations. The Coalition is aware that hostile forces are conducting reconnaissance activities throughout the Outer Rim. Do we know who is responsible for these activities? Sir, that information is classified beyond my clearance level. However, I can tell you that the threat is significant enough to warrant special attention to stations like Kepler that have demonstrated exceptional defensive capabilities. The conversation was interrupted by an urgent communication from Lieutenant Yxera, whose harmonic voice carried notes of alarm that made her crystalline structure resonate audibly. Lieutenant Commander, we are detecting multiple contacts approaching from the Void sector. Initial scans indicate at least 8 vessels moving in coordinated formation toward our position. ZaxTH felt his exoskeleton tighten as he recognized the implications. The void sector was the region of unmapped space that lay beyond Coalition territory, where few vessels traveled and even fewer returned. 8 ships moving in formation from that direction could only mean one thing. General quarters, he announced over the station's communication system. All hands to battle stations. This is not a drill. As the crew responded with the efficiency that their previous encounter had taught them, ZaxTH turned to Lieutenant Martinez with a question that he already knew the answer to. I suppose this security review is about to become significantly more practical than theoretical. Lieutenant Martinez smiled, and, for a moment, ZaxTH saw past the carefully maintained disguise to the person underneath. Agent 7 warned me that you were exceptionally perceptive, Lieutenant Commander. She also mentioned that Kepler Station had become something of a strategic asset. Agent 7 is still in contact with Coalition intelligence? Agent 7 is Coalition intelligence, sir. The official story about her retirement was necessary to protect her cover, but she never actually left the service. She has been operating in deep cover throughout the Outer Rim, investigating the threat network that targeted this station 3 months ago. Before ZaxTH could respond to this revelation, the tactical situation demanded his immediate attention. The 8 approaching vessels had dropped their stealth systems and were revealing themselves to be warships of a design that appeared in no Coalition database. Lieutenant Commander, Sergeant Kellock reported from the security station, the approaching vessels are not responding to standard hails and are maintaining an aggressive formation. Their energy signatures indicate weapons systems that significantly exceed anything in our defensive protocols. ZaxTH studied his tactical displays, noting that the enemy fleet was approaching with the confidence of a force that expected to face minimal resistance. Their formation suggested that they intended to surround the station and disable it through coordinated bombardment, a strategy that would have been highly effective against the defensive systems Kepler Station had possessed 3 months earlier. Lieutenant Martinez, he said formally, what are your orders regarding this situation? Sir, my orders are to observe and report on the station's defensive capabilities under actual combat conditions. Agent 7's modifications to your systems were designed to handle exactly this type of threat. You mean this is a test? No, sir. This is the real thing. The enemy has decided that Kepler Station's enhanced capabilities represent a threat to their operational security in this sector. They intend to eliminate the station and its crew to prevent us from interfering with their larger objectives. Lieutenant Yixera's voice interrupted their conversation with an urgency that made her crystalline structure chime like alarm bells. Lieutenant Commander, the approaching vessels are charging weapons and preparing to fire. Estimated time to weapons range is 3 minutes. ZaxTH activated the station's enhanced defensive systems, watching as displays showed capabilities that still seemed impossible despite having seen them demonstrated before. Shield generators that could deflect battleship-class weapons, targeting computers that could track multiple fast-moving targets simultaneously, and weapons arrays that fired with precision that exceeded fleet standards. All stations, prepare for combat, he announced. We have faced this type of threat before, and we know our capabilities. Defend the station and protect the crew. The battle that followed was unlike anything ZaxTH had experienced in his military career. The enemy fleet attacked with coordinated fury, concentrating their fire on specific sections of the station in an attempt to overwhelm the defensive systems through focused bombardment. Their weapons were powerful enough to destroy conventional installations with ease, and their tactics demonstrated a level of training and coordination that spoke of professional military forces. But Agent 7's modifications had transformed Kepler Station into something that could stand against such an assault. The shields absorbed and distributed incoming energy with efficiency that seemed to violate known physics, while the station's weapons responded with accuracy that eliminated enemy vessels faster than their reinforcements could arrive. The engagement lasted exactly 17 minutes, ending when the last enemy vessel either retreated into the void sector or was disabled and captured by the station's defensive systems. When the tactical displays finally showed clear space around Kepler Station, ZaxTH realized that his frontier posting had just survived an assault that would have challenged a full fleet task force. Lieutenant Commander, Lieutenant Martinez said quietly, Agent 7 was correct about this station's strategic importance. The enemy committed significant resources to eliminate what they perceived as a threat to their operations in this sector. What makes Kepler Station so important? Location, sir. This station sits at the intersection of 3 major trade routes and monitors communications traffic across 17 star systems. In the wrong hands, it could serve as a platform for controlling commerce and intelligence throughout the Outer Rim. ZaxTH studied the tactical aftermath, noting details that painted a disturbing picture of the threat they faced. The enemy vessels, their technology was not consistent with any known hostile species. No, sir. Initial analysis suggests that their technology represents a combination of designs from multiple species, some of which are officially allied with the coalition. This confirms our suspicions about the scope of the conspiracy Agent 7 uncovered. Species we consider allies are providing technology to forces attacking coalition installations? Lieutenant Martinez nodded grimly. Not entire species, sir, but individuals within allied governments who have been compromised or co-opted by the true enemy. The threat network extends across species boundaries and political alignments in ways that make traditional intelligence gathering extremely difficult. As they spoke, the boarding parties that had secured the disabled enemy vessels began transmitting their findings. The captured ships contained evidence that confirmed Agent 7's warnings while raising new questions about the scope of the threat they faced. Lieutenant Commander Sergeant Kelleck reported, the boarding parties have discovered something unusual. The enemy crews appear to be a mixture of species, including several that we have never encountered before. However, their equipment includes technology from at least 6 different allied governments. Are we looking at a mercenary force? Negative, sir. Their coordination and training suggest military units rather than hired criminals. But their loyalty appears to be to something other than any government we recognize. Lieutenant Martinez activated a secured communication device, transmitting the boarding party reports to destinations that ZaxTH assumed were deep within coalition intelligence networks. Sir, she said as she completed the transmission, Agent 7 was correct about the nature of the threat we face. The enemy is not a single hostile species or government, but a coordinated network of infiltrators and collaborators working to destabilize human expansion throughout the galaxy. What is their ultimate objective? Based on the intelligence we have gathered, their goal is to isolate human colonies and installations, making them vulnerable to elimination through manufactured conflicts and coordinated attacks. They appear to believe that humans represent an existential threat to their long-term survival. ZaxTH considered the implications of fighting an enemy that could infiltrate allied governments and coordinate attacks across multiple star systems. How do we combat an enemy that can hide within our own alliances? Lieutenant Martinez smiled with an expression that reminded him strongly of Agent 7's confident determination. The same way Agent 7 has been combating them for the past 18 months, sir. By being better at their own game than they are. You mean infiltration and deception? I mean by utilizing humanity's greatest strategic advantage, Lieutenant Commander. The enemy believes that humans can be defeated through conventional military tactics and political manipulation. They have never faced an opponent that refuses to accept defeat regardless of the odds or circumstances. As Kepler Station began the process of returning to normal operations, ZaxTH reflected on how completely his understanding of the situation had changed once again. The quiet frontier posting he had commanded was actually a strategic asset in a war that spanned the galaxy, defended by systems designed by one of humanity's most capable warriors. But, more importantly, he now understood that the war itself was not about territory or resources, but about the survival of human civilization in a galaxy where other species viewed their expansion as a threat that had to be stopped. The enemy had made the mistake of assuming that eliminating individual installations and operatives would weaken human resolve. Instead, they had awakened a defensive response that would pursue them across the galaxy with relentless determination. And, at the heart of that response were individuals like Agent 7, humans who had accepted the responsibility of fighting in the shadows so that places like Kepler Station could continue to serve as beacons of civilization on the frontier. The war was far from over, but ZaxTH now understood that humanity possessed something their enemies could not replicate or defeat: the absolute refusal to surrender in the face of impossible odds. 6 months after the second battle for Kepler Station, Lieutenant Commander ZaxTH found himself commanding not just a frontier outpost, but the operational center of what coalition intelligence had designated as the Outer Rim Early Warning Network. The transformation had been gradual but profound. Additional personnel had been quietly transferred to the station, their official assignments mundane but their actual qualifications extending far beyond routine garrison duty. The crew now included specialists in xenobiology, communications intercept, deep space reconnaissance, and what the official records euphemistically described as special operations support. More significantly, the station's defensive capabilities had been expanded beyond Agent 7's original modifications. The weapons systems now included experimental technology that officially did not exist, shield generators that could deflect attacks from entire fleets, and sensor arrays capable of monitoring activities across 40 star systems simultaneously. But perhaps the most important addition to Kepler's station was the arrival of Agent 7 herself, though she was now operating under yet another identity and with authorization that came directly from the highest levels of Coalition command. She had returned as Commander Elena Vasquez, Coalition Intelligence Service, with orders to establish and operate a forward intelligence base in the Outer Rim. Her mission was to coordinate the defense of human settlements throughout the frontier while conducting offensive operations against the network of hostile forces that threatened Coalition security. ZaxTH had recognized her immediately, despite the surgical modifications that had altered her facial features and the additional training that had enhanced her already formidable capabilities. The recognition came not from her appearance, which was expertly disguised, but from the way she moved through the station's corridors with the unconscious confidence of someone who knew every system and defensive position by heart. "Commander Vasquez," he had said during their first official meeting, "welcome to Kepler Station. I trust you will find our facilities adequate for your mission requirements." She had smiled then, the expression revealing the person he had known as Sarah Chen while maintaining the professional demeanor expected of a senior intelligence officer. "Lieutenant Commander ZaxTH, your reputation for operational excellence is well established throughout the intelligence service. I look forward to working with you and your exceptional crew." The formal acknowledgement had been necessary for the benefit of the station's security records, but it had also marked the beginning of a partnership that would reshape the balance of power in the Outer Rim. Over the following months, Kepler Station became the hub of operations that prevented 17 separate attacks on Coalition installations, intercepted 43 intelligence-gathering missions, and eliminated 2 major enemy bases hidden in the void sector beyond mapped space. The network of hostile forces that Agent 7 had originally uncovered proved to be even more extensive than initial intelligence had suggested. Their infiltration of allied governments extended to the highest levels of civilian and military leadership. Their technological capabilities exceeded those of most Coalition members, and their strategic patience allowed them to coordinate operations across decades rather than years. But they had made a critical miscalculation in their assessment of human defensive capabilities. The morning of what would become known as the Battle of the Void Threshold began with routine sensor sweeps that detected unusual energy signatures emanating from the unmapped regions beyond Coalition space. Chief Vexlar brought the readings to ZaxTH's attention with the kind of nervous excitement that had become familiar whenever their monitoring systems detected something unprecedented. "Lieutenant Commander," the Saurian engineer reported, "our deep space sensors are detecting massive energy discharges approximately 50 light-years beyond the frontier boundary. The signatures suggest industrial activity on a scale that exceeds anything in Coalition databases." ZaxTH studied the sensor readings, noting patterns that suggested the construction of facilities large enough to support significant military forces. "How long have these signatures been present?" "Based on the energy decay patterns, I estimate that construction began approximately 18 months ago. However, the scale of the activity has increased exponentially over the past 3 weeks." Commander Vasquez arrived in the command center as Vexlar was completing his report, her presence triggering the subtle changes in posture and attention that indicated the crew's recognition of her authority despite their inability to identify her true background. "Commander," ZaxTH said formally, "Chief Vexlar has detected what appears to be large-scale construction activity in the void sector." She studied the sensor readings with the kind of focused intensity that ZaxTH had learned to associate with her analysis of strategic threats. "The energy signatures are consistent with shipyard construction and weapons manufacturing. Based on the scale of activity, they are building a fleet large enough to threaten the entire Outer Rim." "How large are we talking about, Commander?" "Preliminary estimates suggest at least 200 vessels, possibly more. If they achieve the construction timeline indicated by current activity levels, they will possess the capability to overwhelm our defensive networks through sheer numerical superiority." ZaxTH felt his exoskeleton constrict as he contemplated the implications of facing such a force. What are our options? Commander Vasquez activated the secure communication systems that connected Kepler Station to the broader intelligence network she had established throughout the frontier. Our options are limited by the fact that official coalition response would require bureaucratic processes that could take months to implement. By the time fleet reinforcements arrive, the enemy will have completed their preparations and launched their offensive. Unofficial options? We have 47 deep cover operatives positioned throughout the Outer Rim, 16 modified installations capable of coordinating defensive operations, and access to experimental technologies that can significantly multiply our combat effectiveness. ZaxTH understood that she was describing the kind of asymmetric warfare that Agent 7 had been conducting for the past 2 years, scaled up to the level of a major military campaign. What do you need from Kepler Station? I need this station to serve as command center for the most ambitious operation in coalition intelligence history. We are going to prevent the enemy offensive not by defending against it, but by eliminating their capability to launch it. The operation that Commander Vasquez outlined over the following hours challenged everything ZaxTH thought he understood about the limitations of frontier installations and intelligence operations. Rather than waiting for the enemy to complete their preparations and attack coalition positions, she proposed taking the fight directly to their construction facilities in the Void sector. The mission would require coordinating simultaneous strikes against 17 different targets using resources that officially did not exist and personnel whose identities were classified beyond normal coalition clearance levels. The enemy believes that humans will respond to their threat through conventional military deployment, she explained as the station's senior staff reviewed the operational plans. They expect fleet movements, diplomatic negotiations, and defensive preparations that follow established coalition doctrine. Instead, we are going to demonstrate why human strategic thinking has consistently surprised hostile forces throughout our expansion into the galaxy. We adapt, we improvise, and we refuse to fight according to our enemy's expectations. Lieutenant Yixera's crystalline structure resonated with harmonics that indicated both excitement and concern. Commander, the operational requirements you describe exceed the capabilities of standard frontier installations. How do we coordinate strikes across such distances? Lieutenant, Agent 7's modifications to this station included communication systems that can coordinate operations in real time across interstellar distances. What appears to be routine maintenance and defensive upgrades has actually created a command and control network that rivals anything possessed by the coalition fleet. Sergeant Kelleck's massive frame shifted as he studied tactical displays showing the locations of enemy construction facilities. Commander, the intelligence requirements for such an operation would be enormous. How do we maintain operational security while coordinating so many simultaneous missions? Sergeant, the network of operatives and modified installations has been gathering intelligence on enemy activities for over 18 months. We know the location of every major facility, the identity of their key personnel, and the operational procedures that govern their security protocols. ZaxTH realized that he was witnessing the revelation of a military capability that had been developed entirely outside normal coalition channels, designed specifically to counter threats that conventional forces could not address. Commander, what you are describing amounts to a private military operation conducted by coalition intelligence without official oversight or authorization. Commander Vasquez nodded, her expression acknowledging the gravity of what she was proposing. Lieutenant Commander, the threats we face cannot be countered through official channels because the enemy has infiltrated those channels. The only way to protect human expansion and coalition security is to operate outside the systems they have compromised. And if the operation fails? If the operation fails, sir, the enemy will launch their offensive against poorly defended frontier installations and civilian settlements. Based on our intelligence, their objective is the systematic elimination of human presence in the Outer Rim, followed by psychological warfare designed to halt human expansion throughout the galaxy. The weight of that statement settled over the command center as the crew contemplated the scope of what they were facing. This was not merely another attack on a frontier installation, but an attempt to stop human civilization from expanding beyond their current boundaries. What they fail to understand, Commander Vasquez continued, is that every action they take to limit human expansion only demonstrates why we cannot be contained. We do not expand through conquest or domination, but through the simple refusal to accept that any challenge is insurmountable. The operation launched 3 days later with precision that demonstrated years of preparation and coordination that spanned dozens of star systems. From Kepler Station, ZaxTH watched as 47 separate missions unfolded simultaneously, each targeting critical components of the enemy's construction network. The strikes were not designed to capture territory or eliminate personnel, but to systematically destroy the industrial capability that would have produced the fleet-threatening coalition space. Deep cover operatives sabotaged power generation facilities while modified installations provided targeting data for precision weapons that eliminated construction shipyards from distances that made retaliation impossible. The engagement lasted exactly 6 hours and resulted in the complete destruction of enemy fleet construction capabilities throughout the void sector. By the time enemy forces realized the scope of what was happening, their ability to respond had been eliminated by follow-up strikes that targeted command centers and communication networks. When the tactical displays finally showed clear space where the enemy construction facilities had been located, ZaxTH realized that he had just witnessed something unprecedented in coalition military history, the complete elimination of a strategic threat through operations that had never officially existed. "Commander," he said as the post-operation reports confirmed the success of every mission, "what happens now?" "The enemy network has been severely damaged, but they still possess infiltration capabilities throughout coalition space." Commander Vasquez smiled with the satisfaction of someone who had just completed a task that had consumed years of her life. "Now, Lieutenant Commander, we begin the next phase of operations." The enemy made the mistake of believing that they could threaten human settlements without consequences. They are about to learn that humans possess something no other species in the galaxy can match. Which is the absolute conviction that any threat to innocent people must be eliminated completely, regardless of the cost or the time required to achieve that objective. As Kepler Station began returning to normal operations, ZaxTH reflected on how dramatically his understanding of human capabilities had evolved since Agent 7 first arrived as a simple Garrison cook. What he had initially perceived as a quiet retirement from military service had actually been the beginning of the most effective intelligence operation in coalition history. The enemy network that had threatened human expansion throughout the galaxy had been systematically dismantled by operatives who possessed the one characteristic that no amount of planning or resources could counter: the refusal to accept defeat when defending innocent people. But, more importantly, ZaxTH now understood that the success of human expansion into the galaxy was not due to superior technology or military might, but to something far more fundamental. Humans possessed the unique ability to adapt their strategies and tactics to overcome any obstacle, no matter how insurmountable it might appear. The network of hostile forces had spent decades preparing for conventional warfare against human settlements. They had never prepared to face an opponent that would refuse to fight according to conventional rules, that would pursue them across the galaxy with relentless determination, and that would sacrifice everything to protect innocent people from harm. As Commander Vasquez prepared for the next phase of operations that would eliminate the remaining enemy infiltrators throughout coalition space, ZaxTH realized that he was witnessing something that would echo throughout galactic history. The moment when humanity proved that they could not be contained, could not be intimidated, and would never stop fighting to protect the innocent, regardless of the odds they faced. The galaxy had tried to limit human expansion and had learned why that was impossible. Some species were destined to reach for the stars, and no force in the universe could prevent them from achieving that destiny. The war was over, but the legend of human determination had only just begun.